Did you know there's a type of government job that's a little different? There's actually a special department where employees work day and night reviewing explicit online content. It's called the Youth Protection Unit. Their mission? To screen and regulate harmful material. Most of the staff are men, and let's just say, out of every 10 guys, 8 end up needing medical help. Watching 40 to 50 videos a day? It's enough to break anyone, and adult content is just the beginning. They also deal with gruesome, bizarre, and downright disturbing videos. As one colleague puts it, once you step through that door, kiss your sanity goodbye. Enter Danbi, our heroine, a civil servant with dreams of becoming a children's book author. What follows is a hilarious and heartwarming journey of self-discovery.
남자 성기를 1번, 여자 성기를 2번, 채모로 3번. 방금 2번, 3번 보이셨죠? 확대된 것 같은데.
네.
Danbi's father was a beloved children's writer whose greatest dream was to create a masterpiece for his daughter. Sadly, he passed away before he could make it happen. Danbi made a heartfelt vow to honor her father's legacy, determined to become an outstanding fairy tale writer herself. But dreams don't pay the bills. To secure a stable future, Danbi worked hard, passed the civil service exam, and landed what she thought would be a safe, boring government job perfect for quietly pursuing her writing dreams. To celebrate her first day at work, her publishing mentor, Hee-cheol, came to visit. Not knowing fate had other plans, Danbi showed up at her new office, only to realize she was the only woman there. Then, an accident happened. Someone's headphones popped off, and the whole room filled with very awkward noises. Screens everywhere were showing restricted content. It turns out, the department she worked for was called the Youth Protection Unit, responsible for screening and rating online videos. The team leader assigned Jeon-suk from Team 3 to train her, a man who, just a few hours earlier, was literally drafting his resignation letter. After 6 years of non-stop exposure to explicit content, Jeon-suk was emotionally and mentally drained. Most new employees usually quit within a month, and he himself had reached his breaking point. But the team leader made him a promise: if he could keep Danbi around for just 3 more months, he'd finally get transferred to the planning department, his dream job. Now, Jeon-suk is ready to do whatever it takes to help Danbi survive, and maybe save himself in the process. He briefly explained the job. When a report about explicit content comes in, they need to click the link, thoroughly review it, and then decide whether to delete or block the post according to the Communications Act. Danbi quickly asked, "Am I the only female employee here?" Luckily, she wasn't alone. Unfortunately, the other female staff member, Jin Kyung, had recently divorced because of the job and was even at risk of losing custody of her child. Her ex-husband believed this work was detrimental to the child's education. Danbi decided to take the job, confident that she could adapt. However, Jin Kyung wasn't exactly encouraging. "Everyone here deals with eye-watering stuff every day. We all have some unspeakable issues. You've got to hold on."
그래서 우리 담비 처음 만난 남자랑 같이 보는 포르노는 기분이 어땠어?
Danbi felt like crying. She was supposed to become a fairy tale writer. How could she possibly write fairy tales after watching all this? But quitting was out of the question, especially since passing the civil service exam had been no easy feat. She adjusted her mindset and made a plan: work until 6 p.m., eat at 8 p.m., and then write fairy tales for 4 hours, believing that one day she would succeed. Then, the next day, trouble struck. A protester, Representative Hwang, was outside the broadcasting building demanding freedom of expression, arguing that adults had the right to create explicit content. Danbi got so caught up in the protest that she accidentally knocked off the side mirror of a Porsche parked nearby. The owner was none other than Representative Hwang himself. The car was a rare vintage model, and replacing the mirror would cost 100 million Korean won. Danbi couldn't afford that. Her worried expression made Jeon-suk panic. Thinking she was about to quit, the car owner, Representative Hwang, made it clear he was going to pin the blame on her. He ran an adult novel studio and had been struggling with complaints about explicit content. He suggested, "If you just ease up on the complaints against our writers, I can reduce the mirror compensation." Danbi refused. This was criminal. After thinking it over, she decided to help rewrite the violating content. With her background in literature, she figured she could handle editing adult novels. That kind of trashy adult content was easy enough to modify. But Representative Hwang was furious. Art has no boundaries. How can adult literature be considered trash? Though Danbi had her pride, she eventually agreed to sign a contract, complete 20 adult novels, and the cost of the Porsche side mirror would be waived. She had no respect for works of this genre. She turned on her AI assistant to generate an outline, only to find that it was too proper to generate anything related to adult content. Fortunately, her work gave her access to a bunch of flagged adult material on her computer. With gritted teeth, Danbi decided to borrow some ideas. Her colleagues were chatting in the group. The new girl seems like she's about to quit any day now. The most nervous was Jeon-suk, who, thinking Danbi was quitting, bought her expensive sushi to cheer her up. But when he caught her secretly copying explicit novels, he realized she wasn't quitting because of the work, it was because of the car accident debts. He seized the opportunity. If you can stick it out for 3 months, I'll forget about this illegal copying. Jeon-suk happily went home with his sushi, enjoying the music. Danbi had no choice but to squeeze in time for writing adult novels to pay off her debt, leaving less and less time for fairy tale writing. Wanting to avoid putting in too much effort, she started copying from different books and replacing inappropriate words with 1 and 2. Unfortunately, this mishmash of copied content couldn't be published.
항상 처음부터 내가 뭐 별 기대한 것도 아니지 뭐. 아유 근데 희가 표절까지 해? 그럼 또 작가냐?
Downcast, she went home and ran into a writer, Woo, who had signed with Representative Huang. Woo understood the public's bias against adult novels but still loved the profession. Danbi respected her but didn't quite understand. However, as she glanced at Woo's bag, she spotted stickers of characters from her father's fairy tale book. It turned out that writer Woo had always been a fan of Danbi's father, and inspired by his work, she had become a writer herself. Hearing this, Danbi's resolve became even stronger.
꼭 동화 작가로 성공해야겠다는 의지가 존나 불타올라.
야 서른, 다 썼냐?
Danbi's best friend, Chae-young, was a seasoned pro when it came to love. After reading Danbi's patchwork novel, she pointed out that the story lacked atmosphere, saying it was like a wildlife documentary, totally lacking romance. Danbi asked her for advice, and Chae-young recalled a time in college when she was sketching by the lake, exchanging flirtatious glances with her boyfriend on the rowing team, only to be drawn to a younger student. The innocent thrill of accidentally bumping into each other in a crowded elevator was something she could never forget. Danbi thought about the right balance and threw herself into the writing. By the time she finished, it was already time to go home, so she asked Jeon-suk to read her draft. To her surprise, it had an incredible effect. Jeon-suk's hidden issue was miraculously cured. Danbi had no idea such a big change had occurred. She invited him out for drinks and candidly asked, "Do you think adult novels are like fairy tales? Do they count as literary creation?" Jeon-suk replied, "As long as there are readers, they have value." He quickly brushed off Danbi and rushed home, eager to see if the novel had truly resolved his issue. The next day, Danbi handed her draft to Representative Huang, and he thought it was pretty good. Representative Huang had intended to give her a hard time, but seeing that the work was acceptable, he decided to publish it. However, his happiness was short-lived. Just 2 seconds later, he received news of Woo's contract termination fee. Representative Huang's last remaining writer had been poached by his rival. His rival, Young-ki, was a former writer under him. They parted ways due to differing views. Young-ki was ruthless, specifically targeting inexperienced female writers, luring them into relationships, and then recording videos for writing inspiration. The number of girls he had tricked was countless. Meanwhile, Danbi's friend Yoon-hai became her inspiration. The 3 friends were taking photo booth pictures when Danbi, in camouflage, asked Yoon-hai, "You dated a soldier for 8 years and never cheated, right?" Yoon-hai reminisced about the past. Her boyfriend, Hee-myung, was serving in the army, and they hadn't seen each other for a while. Relying only on phone calls, Hee-myung missed her so much that he trained hard to earn a leave of absence, which his superior approved. Yoon-hai visited him after hearing the news. Hee-myung, excited, ran toward her from the training grounds, but before they could meet, she bumped into his first love from school.
여긴 누구 만나러 온 거야?
사촌 오빠.
Hee-myung's fate was tragic. Young-hai couldn't resist the temptation and made a mistake. By the time Hee-myung finally arrived at the family meeting room, Young-hai had already left.
정혜야, 늦게 와서 미안해.
Danbi wrote a script based on Young-hai's story, and after Jeon-suk read it, he was energized. As he awkwardly squeezed into the elevator, Danbi's phone just happened to bump into him.
전화를 안 받지?
Hee Cheol kept calling her non-stop, and poor Jong-suk could only endure the awkwardness and silence. After reading Danbi's 2 drafts, Representative Hwang realized that her fundamentals were solid and asked where she had trained. Danbi mentioned that she had been influenced by her father, a winner of the 2013 New Year's Literary Award. Representative Hwang was stunned. "So you're Yoon Kang-cheol's daughter?" It turns out Representative Hwang was also a contestant back then and almost caused a scene at the awards ceremony after failing to win. Danbi's novels were a massive success after publication, soaring to 17th place on the popularity chart. Even she hadn't realized she had such a talent. The Youth Protection Unit held a welcome party for her. She got incredibly drunk, and Jong-suk, trying to help her sober up, bought her popsicles. Unknowingly, he began to develop feelings for the straightforward young woman and hoped she would become a cool writer. Though Danbi's adult novels were doing well, she hadn't given up on fairy tales. She took the first few chapters of her fairy tale to Hee Cheol for feedback. He thought it was good and was about to suggest some edits when her computer popped up with a spam ad.
우리 담비는 절대 이런 거 보면 안 돼. 알았어? 알았어?
If Hee Cheol knew about her job, he'd probably faint on the spot. Danbi went home to revise her fairy tale, but it kept veering into 19+ content, and her writing habits were seriously affecting her children's stories. She didn't want to create a mess, so she went to bed to rest. However, her symptoms only worsened. On her way to work, seeing men and women triggered her imagination in unexpected ways, but this also fueled her creativity, and her work climbed into the top 5 on the charts, even earning her a private office. Still, she wasn't happy. She felt like she was betraying her father's wishes and balancing the roles of a civil servant, a children's author, and an adult novelist was starting to take its toll. Jong-suk woke her up with a simple truth. Fairy tales were your father's dream, not yours. You don't have to feel guilty. Danbi barely had time to think before realizing the huge mistake she had made. She had accidentally sent her adult novel to the fairy tale competition's email, and it had to be urgently recalled before the recipient confirmed it. With heavy traffic on the way, she rushed through the rain but still missed the deadline and was expelled by the competition organizers. Hee Cheol was furious. Feeling embarrassed as her recommender, the image of his pure little sister was shattered into pieces.
어디 가서 동화 쓴다고 하지 마. 너 작가도 아니야.
Crushed by the blow, Danbi spiraled into self-pity and even resented Representative Hwang for interfering with her life. Representative Hwang angrily asked, "Is only a fairy tale valuable? You weren't happy writing fairy tales. You were just doing your father's homework." Confused, Danbi ran back home to find her mother. When her mother heard about the blunder, she just laughed.
너 몰라? 네 아빠 너 때문에 동화 썼잖아. 네가 동화 쓰는 아빠 멋지다고 뻔뿌질하는 바람에 딸은 또 아빠 때문에 동화 쓴다고?
Back home, Danbi had an epiphany. Looking at the readers' comments on her website, she suddenly understood Representative Hwang's words. Readers were spending happy days thanks to her novels, eagerly waiting for updates every day, encouraging her in the comments sections. This was exactly the feedback every writer dreams of. She dug out her father's old box of belongings and discovered that he had preferred writing romance novels and had never imposed his wishes on her. Determined to move forward, Danbi returned to the Youth Protection Unit and fully embraced her identity as an adult novelist. Meanwhile, writer Woo discovered that Yoon-ki had posted their one-night stand as a story online. Realizing she had been deceived, it turned out that Representative Hwang had terminated his contract with Yoon-ki back then because he didn't like how Yoon-ki deceived women and turned those experiences into novels. After going independent, Yoon-ki's Real Hunt for Women claimed that every female character was based on real people, attracting a massive readership and staying at #1 on the charts for 36 weeks. He exploited the women's fear of reporting him, shamelessly marketing his books. Danbi recognized a Thomas Adventure sticker on the new character's backpack in Real Hunt for Women and realized that Woo was the one who had been tricked. Representative Hwang confronted Yoon-ki, but Yoon-ki bluntly stated, "Danbi is my next target." Representative Hwang tried to reason with him, but Yoon-ki kicked in his rearview mirror, a scene Danbi witnessed.
야, 이 비겁한 새끼야. 자존심이라고 꼴랑 2차 하나뿐인 사람 울리고 싶어? 노인네한테 그러고 싶어? 내일 모레면 70이야.
나 아직 그 정도 아니야.
Disgusted by his underhanded tactics, Danbi declared, "If my work beats Real Hunt for Women, you'll take down the novel. If you stay in first place, I'll sign with you, and we'll split the profits 80-20. After agreeing on the terms, Danbi hit a creative block, but eventually, inspiration struck from her father's old books. She decided to write an adult-themed fairy tale. She planned to reimagine characters like Snow White, The Little Mermaid, and Cinderella. the outline quickly took shape. After Snow White marries the prince, she gets entangled with the 7 dwarfs. When dragged into the courtroom, she discovers that the dwarfs are actually in love with the prince and even turn on each other in a bitter rivalry for his affection. Jong Suk, impressed by the draft, couldn't stop praising it. By this time, the two had already developed feelings for each other and soon became a couple. Danbi's The Prince and the 7 Dwarfs was published to huge success, with readers drawn to the fresh content and constantly spending money on it. Even the Fairytale competition organizers started eagerly waiting for updates. As expected, she topped the charts, leaving Yoon-ki furious, smashing his computer. He then reported her on the review board, accusing a public servant named Yoon of writing adult novels. Since Danbi was the only Yoon in the Youth Protection Unit, the accusation was clear, and the office was bombarded with media calls. Danbi, Representative Hwang, and writer Woo tracked down Yoon-ki and gave him a good beating. However, Danbi was still criticized for her civil servant status and faced the risk of losing her job.
어디서 여자가 그런 남사스러운 글 쓰고 말이야. 공무원 품격 떨어지게.
위원장님, 공무원의 품격을 운운하시기 전에 공무원의 기본적인 인격부터 좀 챙기시죠. 저는 그만두겠습니다.
Danbi decided to end her double life and live for herself. As long as I have a computer, I can create value. Yoon-ki, on the other hand, was sued for his illegal filming and faced prison time. The film ends here. The story is unique in its setup, bold in its themes, but lighthearted and humorous in tone. Through the heroine's experiences, the director speaks out for adult culture. Danbi goes from despising adult novels to shedding her prejudice and embracing the work. The film even pokes fun at AI assistants, at least when it comes to adult content. Humans are more creative than AI.